So this entire outfeed table is simply going to be made from 6 2x6s and then 1, 2, 3, 4 2x4s. This is for the main frame assembly, and then 2 pieces of plywood, 1 3/4 inch for the top, and then the bottom will be a 1/2 inch sheet. And I already have the SketchUp file made for this, so it's just gonna be as simple as cutting and assembling it together. So let's go ahead and get started. After looking closely at the material, I decided to actually take it down to 1 1/4 inch, and this made it easier down the road when assembling because then the boards were really true and flat. This step is totally not necessary, but for this, I decided to do it anyway. So with all of our pieces cut to dimension and cut to their final length, we can now look at our leg assembly here. And what I'm going for is just a simple L shape like this. And what this will look like when it's all done will be very similar to this cart right here, where there's a piece going in this direction and then glued along this direction here. And those are large glue surfaces, so they're going to be really strong when they're put together. Now, before I assemble these, the first thing I'd like to do is just sand both of the faces. That way it'll be quicker than when it's all together. So now with these pieces sanded, it's time to look at the joinery method for this. There's several ways that I could do this, but I think for this, in terms of speed, efficiency, and just really wanting to get it done, I think I'm gonna go ahead and glue them and screw them together. That way we get the strength of the glue bond, and we also get the efficiency of just being able to screw them together. And with our legs assembled on the ground here, we could now cut the long cross members to final length. And I didn't do this earlier just in case I wanted to change the dimension. And to give all the parts a nice look, I decided to give everything a round over with the router. And now this is where this is going to start looking like a table. I joined the 2 longer cross members with the legs, and I had 2 sets of those, which were then later joined to the other cross members. And this worked out pretty well because I was able to lay out everything on the ground, I wasn't really tripping over anything, and I was able to glue and screw everything together. Now, one oversight that I actually ended up catching before it was too late was with the bottom panel. And this bottom panel shelf thingy had to be installed before I actually put the rest of the framing together. And a little fun fact for you, this is actually the first sheet of plywood that I'm cutting on the new table saw. And this bottom shelf is going to be super nice because it's big, it's open, and I could really put whatever I want underneath. And with this sheet of plywood cut, it could be slid into place and kind of encapsulated into the framing. And then once that was in place, I could then attach the other 2 cross members. And this is just another reason why it's so nice to have a big open space to work on projects like this. if I were to be trying to put this together on another workbench, it would be much more difficult. Next up was laying out and installing the mid cross supports. These were simply 2x4s that were cut to a certain length and installed underneath the tabletop as well as underneath the shelf. Now, I've made a few carts in my shop over the past couple of years, and I can say the biggest investment that you should make is in the casters. And I fastened the casters directly on the bottom of the table simply with some bolts. One of the other carts in the shop that I use a lot has really good casters on the bottom, and for the Outfeed table I wanted the same thing, so I decided to go with the same casters. Not only do they roll really nicely, but when they're in the locked position they actually stay locked, and it's like the cart isn't even actually on casters. And this is a perfect example as to why I purchased a larger saw that has a larger rip capacity. The top for this had to be just over 35 inches, and the old rip capacity on the previous saw I believe was about 30.5 inches, so I would have had to cut this piece on the circular saw. And as you can see, I'm already getting a little bit of use out of the table. As for some final details, I decided to use the same roundover that I used on the other components on the top, and that'll prevent the top from splitting, and it'll just be nicer when I'm handling the cart. And then before I applied a finish, I also decided to sand the top as well as the shelf, and that just knocked down the rough texture of the plywood. And the last step was applying a finish, and for this I went with a boiled linseed oil, and the idea behind this is that over time I could apply more coats, and if something gets dinged or scratched, I could always sand it down and apply another coat. My main workbench has several coats of boiled linseed oil that has been applied over the years, and I've been super happy with it, so I wanted to have the same thing on this cart. And as you can see, there are many similarities that I'm pulling from past projects and implementing them into this one. So that is going to finish up this build. I have the new table saw set up, I have the Outfeed table ready to go. A lot of the things in this back corner I was able to put underneath the Outfeed table, and now they're a lot more accessible. So now we have the new table saw and the new Outfeed table, and I can't wait to get going on the next project and see how both of these things work out. Obviously I used the new table saw to build the Outfeed table, and that was super nice, but now I get to actually use them both together. So with that said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I'm so happy that I finally had this done. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.